They said you were the best in the Parsec.
Welcome to
Parsec Passion, a podcast dedicated to Disney Plus's The Mandalorian, the first live-action Star Wars show. With me, with me as always, is somebody with a really terrible nickname. It's Catfish. Catfish, how you doing?
Oh, I am doing splendid. Like Yoda over this Thanksgiving weekend, I really gorged myself on some innocent beings.
Did they have any Frog Lady's eggs at your Thanksgiving meal, Catfish?
Yeah, I mean, it was all Frog Lady egg all the time.
Oh no, listeners, we've just celebrated in the United States Thanksgiving 2020, which meant you put on a mask and stuff your face. Somehow those two things are compatible. And today we're going to be talking about the most recent episode of The Mandalorian. It's Season 2. We just saw Episode 5. We are at Chapter 13, The Jedi.
What,
Fish,
the who? What?
The Jedi. What is your rating out of 10 for this episode?
All right, well, I thought I was going to put it on the double D scale.
Double D?
Yeah, deal double cross. But
Ahsoka!
I'm going to have to give it 8.
8.
What I like to call triple T's.
Triple T's?
Yeah, terrible TOTA title. Oh boy. Worse than having TOTA eat frog legs is to give him a name like Grogu. This is a horrible misstep. I think people across the world are up in arms about TOTA's new appellation.
Well, still 8 out of 10 is pretty good.
I enjoyed a lot of it. I did enjoy kind of the sort of samurai feel of it.
Yeah.
I will say this. If you think about this,
I won't.
The Mandalorian, he said, I've been tasked to find a Jedi. He finds, I guess, close enough to a Jedi. She says she's not a Jedi.
Right.
And then she's like, no, I won't do it. Now, that's fine. I can see a way to argue around her reasons, but I understand her reasons. Still, at this point, I would have expected a little more pushback from the Mandalorian. I just want him at one point to go like, all right, now hold on. This is my task, all right? I'm done. Like, at least, but a little more pushback. He was like, unless we kind of had gotten a sense that he's really softened to Grogu. But it's hard to tell if he softened anything because we can never see his facial expressions. So anyway, I enjoyed it. I mean, obviously, he's not going to give away Grogu. No. I would have liked a little bit more pushback on his point. Although I did appreciate that finally someone gives him a side quest and he's like, gimme the cash. What about you, Bubba? What was your rating for Chapter 13?
Catfish, you made me think of so many things. If he's like, my task was to find a Jedi, close enough, and he just raised his hands up and went, victory!
Yeah, right.
I'm done. That would have been something.
He's like, I'm going to take off my mask. There's a little lady on a small planet that's waiting for me.
Ooh, heck yeah. Catfish, call me crazy. I know there are some listeners out there and Star Wars fans out there who loved this episode, who call it their favorite episode of The Mandalorian.
No, they're wrong.
I'm not that way. I don't feel that way. In fact, I'm only going to give this episode 7 double A's out of 10.
Double A's?
Yeah, well, double A's are what I like to call adversary apathy. I saw the adversary of the week. I was apathetic about it. This, across 13 chapters, has got to be the weakest adversary problem that Din Djarin has had to face. I'll talk about in A New Hope. The movie opens with our adversaries taking Princess Leia prisoner. They send a torture droid in to torture her. They slaughter Jawas. They kill Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Stuff.
They blow up a planet. They kill Obi-Wan. Guess what? We want them defeated. And when Luke, spoiler alert, blows up the first Death Star, the audience cheers. Hey, these bad guys were bad. Woo, we cheered. Some people have a problem with the sequel trilogy. Think about the very first one, The Force Awakens. Our buddy Kylo Ren kills his dad, Han Solo, then he slices his lightsaber up the back of Finn. When the lightsaber flies past Kylo Ren and into Rey's hand, the audience cheers. When she starts kicking his ass, the audience cheers. Why? Because we know what an a-hole Kylo Ren has just been. We want him defeated. Now, these bad guys, I'm just completely apathetic to them. Sure, they put some people in the the shockade, hashtag trademark, at Fit and Trim on Twitter. But otherwise, we don't know anything about them.
This is one big point I had. So they talk about the adversary here as if she's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's never explained why then she's on this whole planet and what she's doing on this planet. Like, is there a precious supply of swamp grass that the entire universe needs and they're farming here? Like, why is she here?
Well, how about this, Catfish? In this episode, we meet Ahsoka Tano, and I know there's so many Star Wars fans who are excited and thrilled and just loved seeing her in live action. But Ahsoka Tano, why is she against this magistrate? Because she wants some information from the magistrate. There's never any, you're torturing this city, you're hurting these people, you're ruining this planet. It's like, give me the information. If the magistrate had said, oh, you want to know where Admiral Thrawn is? He's here. Do you think Ahsoka Tano would have been like, peace out? So we need to know these things. We need to want to have a villain or an obstacle overcome, even if it's not a human villain. Like in 2 of the episodes this season, we saw an evil crate dragon on Tatooine, or we saw the giant ice spiders. Like, oh, okay, that's a big adversary that our heroes have to overcome and defeat or whatever. Now, let me say, the first half of this episode, I was in love with. I thought the first half was strong, but when it suddenly resolves around beating these villains that I was very apathetic about, it hurt the episode for me, 7 out of 10. And I know I rated another episode this season 7 out of 10, but so far this is my least favorite.
Well, it's definitely nowhere near the problematic Chapter 10, Episode 2. But, yeah, it's just a lack of understanding. When you talk about some people, this is their favorite episode, it's probably because of Ahsoka Tano. All these people who have a wider knowledge are like, this is so exciting, we're getting to see, this is kind of being expanded on. Part of it is probably, this is something that I really love, and I'm so glad it's being brought into the show in the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
They've got a delicate path to trod here as far as they go. I don't have any idea who Ahsoka Tano is, and so for me, they do a very big thing here, which is, this is something that you always used to remind me of. Listeners will know that Bubba and I met at an improv class here in Los Angeles, and there was a long-form improv that was a movie, that you got some information from the audience, and you actually created a movie. And Bubba would always say to me, you must have the main character defeat the bad person. It's very bad if you don't have the main character defeat the bad person. So what are they saying here when the big bad of this episode is actually taken down? That the big final conflict is between Ahsoka Tano and this person. What they're telling you there is that, like, she is a really big deal. But for people who don't know anything about her, it's a little kind of strange to make her that big of a deal.
I'm kind of a big deal here on Corvus.
Yeah, exactly.
Listeners, we always say, who cares what we think?
Take me to your leader. I don't give a shit about the people in the shockade.
Listeners, we always say, who cares what we think? We want to know what you think. Write to us on social media and tell us we're wrong. You can't unsubscribe in anger unless you've subscribed and written to us and told us we were wrong. On social media, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at @PHQ. That's the word double, the single letter P for podcast, then HQ for headquarters. At @PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. YouTube, leave those YouTube comments. We want to hear from you. If you really love this episode, don't let us take your enjoyment of the episode away in any way. Convince us that we're wrong and you're right. We are very convincible here at the Parsec Passion Podcast. And to help you convince us, and once again, if you want to unsubscribe in anger, first, subscribe and send us a screenshot of your subscription here to the Parsec Passion Podcast, and you'll be eligible to win some great prizes. If you subscribe on Apple Podcast, on Stitcher, on Overcast, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube, Podcast Addict, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Alexa Media Player, Podbean, Podcast Republic, Audible, RSS Radio, iCatcher, Podcruncher, Podimo, Echo, Podnods. I'm not going to go through all the things that I see people subscribe and get this podcast through.
At least two of those are not real.
They're all real, and there are a bunch more I didn't read from the analytics of this crazy thing. But just send us that shot of you subscribed. You'll be eligible to win. We're going to be giving away great prizes like our super grand prize, the 10-inch Funko figure, pop figure of Mando and the child, a.k.a. Grogu. And this could be a collector's item, because this does just say the child. It doesn't say Grogu on it. You know, all the toys going from here on out will have the words Grogu on them. So this darn thing could be a special prize for anybody sending in those entries right now.
Bubba, but I'm asking you, what if I'm a foreign listener? I just want to listen to one podcast from America to try to explain why America has gone nuts over the last 4 years. Am I really going to get a prize?
Catfish, we have at least 42 different countries who download and listen to this podcast. In the past contests here at Double P, we have sent prizes to the UK. We've sent prizes to Australia, to France. We've sent a prize to Switzerland, and this is my favorite prize story. So when we were covering Jonathan Strange and Mr. Knurl on our Lost Hope podcast, if you love that fantasy book or fantasy TV miniseries, look for Lost Hope on your podcast apps. We were covering that, and we had a prize which was a signed script from the author of the miniseries, Peter Harness, who is in Sweden. He offered to give us a prize. So he signed this script. He mailed it to us in Los Angeles. Then we had to mail the winner in Switzerland. This script, this prize went halfway around the world to get to its final destination. And listeners, even if you're international, we want to give you a prize. So please send us those pictures of your subscriptions.
Wow. I love it. And you know, I used to apologize on behalf of ourselves for representing America.
Yeah.
But now we represent it far better than our own president. So, I mean, big ups to us.
And like our current sitting president, I also won this election. Okay, there go more listeners. Unsubscribe in anger after you submit to the contest. Catfish, there are only 3 episodes left in this season of The Mandalorian. This thing flies by.
Holy cow, is that true? There's only 3 left?
Only 3 left. We've got a long way to go before we get to that sitting stone where we're going to ask if we want to be a Jedi or not and reach out to other possible Jedi and Force users. And so because there are only 3 episodes left, we've talked about it before, listeners. If you have only found us here through the Parsec Passion, Star Wars, Mandalorian podcast, why don't we give our listeners some other good shows or bad shows to check out that we do podcasts about, Catfish, something that once these 3 episodes are over, and the last podcast for us comes out after December 16th, in those doldrums of January 2021, something they should check out and something they should listen to our podcast on as well. I just mentioned Jonathan Strange and Mr. Knurl. It's not on Netflix anymore here in the United States, but if you do have Netflix, the German show Dark, Tiny and I do a podcast on that entitled Wind in Caves. It's really, really good. And we also do a great podcast where Catfish and I and our musical expert Double M Matt Murdick do a great podcast about another Netflix German show entitled Babylon Berlin. That show, I believe, over in Europe is on the Sky channels, but we do a podcast there called Babylon Berlin Babel. Those are really good shows, and you can listen to our podcast and check those out on the break. How about you, Catfish? Is there a great show you like that we do a good podcast on?
All right. So I like the way that you have split this out here. I want to mention 2 separate ones. One where I think it's a good show and a good podcast.
Okay.
And then one, I think some of the times we have the best fun is when it's a really bad show.
Oh, no.
And so we just really have fun with the podcast. So this might be a little tougher for listeners because simply for the logic that if you hate a show, you'll probably stop watching it. And so you won't want to listen to the podcast. But if you love it and you listen to our podcast making fun of it, you probably won't like the podcast. However,
okay.
All right. So for a good show, good podcast, I have noticed that popping up, I've got so many streaming platforms I'm on.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime, But Ash vs. Evil Dead is now available streaming without being on Stars. So that is a great show, Ash versus Evil Dead TV show, and our podcast. We went through a couple names. I believe it's Ash versus Evil Dead versus Bubba versus Catfish.
We did, and that's a really fun podcast, really fun show. So if you like comedy, horror, hijinks type show, that's a great one to watch. And we do a really good job on the Ash versus Evil Dead versus Bubba versus Catfish podcast. Okay, so that's a good one. Do you have a terrible show, Catfish, that we did a good podcast about?
I do, and this one I'd like to pub up, even though I only make very minor appearances on it, and that is you and Mork, your podcast of The Strain called Got Your Milk. Just a delicious, delicious podcast. I'm not sure where you can find The Strain, but I'm sure you can find it.
It's a horror series, so if you like horror or if you hate horror, The Strain works in both sides of it. And search your podcast apps for a podcast entitled Got Your Milk, FX is The Strain. Here's my terrible show where we'd had a real fun podcast on, Catfish. There was a show called Emerald City. It was the latest reimagining of the Wizard of Oz stories, but set in adult, dark fantasy world. And believe it or not, even though NBC here in the United States, the National Broadcasting Company, came up with a new app, which they call Peacock, it's not on that. They didn't put that show on that. Instead, Emerald City is on the NBC app, or you can go to NBC.com and watch this show, which is totally terrible. Now, the good news is it's only a one-season commitment. It's a one season of a terrible show. And we also, in our podcast, is also slightly bizarre. We decided to try to combine a podcast recap with a live reaction show. And it may not have worked in the podcast. The show didn't work as a show, but we have a lot of fun laughing and watching that. And so if you've got a strong stomach, Emerald City...
I mean, if you want to see Vincent D'Onofrio just going hog wild, that is the show to watch for sure. And I just looked here, Bubba, The Strain is on Hulu, seasons 1 through 3. Yes.
Yeah, trust me, you don't want to go to season 4 because the resolution is as good as seasons 1 through 3. Hey, Catfish, we got some Mandalorian news to cover.
Let's hear it. Give me the scoop.
Well, last week, as I'm sure many of our listeners know, Chapter 12 of The Mandalorian, there was one brief shot where you saw one of the crew members in the shot. So in the corner of the screen, you saw a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, and an arm with a wristwatch on it. You didn't see the person's face in any way, but you could see this crew member in the shot. And so Star Wars fans were already excited. They were thinking at the next Comic-Con or Star Wars celebration, they were going to go dressed up as a wall, and then just you could see a guy with t-shirts, jeans, and a wristwatch behind it. They were so excited. But like the Game of Thrones coffee cups, the fix is in. Disney has removed the jeans guy from the last episode. No!
Oh, my God. It's too bad, because if Lucas was still involved in these shows, he would have first taken off the watch, and then in a later one, he would have put him in a dress, and then in a later one, he just would have made him a silver ball, and then eventually it would have been a TIE fighter.
Grief wore jeans first. Okay, so they removed that. And then, Catfish, in more Mandalorian news, I got to be honest, I keep mentioning we're on Instagram, at PHQ on the Instagram app. And because it's pictures and we're doing video for various reasons, we don't do much on Instagram. But one of our most popular Instagrams have been where we've gone out and found Star Wars characters promoting merchandise where you're like, this makes no sense to promote. The classic story I said is I was in a Home Depot, a hardware store here in the United States. I saw a fridge, and a microwave, and a dishwasher, and an oven. And for some reason, they had Star Wars stickers on all of them saying, hey, like, buy this fridge. It'll keep you cold, like Hoth or whatever. And I thought, boy, this is the most ridiculous tie-in promotion. The comical button to that story is I came home and realized, oh, I own that fridge. I own that microwave. That's my oven. So anyway, there are more Mandalorian tie-ins coming out. Recently, though, my favorite has been the cookies. The cookies that Grogu stole from that kid the other day, just last week. If you go into a Williams in Sonoma, which is a kitchen store that you'll see in malls or on shopping strips, they are selling Navarro Nummy Macarons for $50 for 12. So you get 12 of these cookies that Baby Yoda ate, and it cost you $50.
I'd pay for it if I got the ride to go along with it.
Right.
Other than that, no.
Listeners, I was in a Williams-Sonoma just yesterday on Black Friday here in the United States, a famous shopping day, and I was looking for them. They have a lot of other Star Wars goodies in there, including Star Wars crock pots and such things, but these macaroons, how do you say it? Macaroon, or how do you say it? Macarons?
I think it's macaron, yeah.
They were all sold out at my local Williams-Sonoma.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
Can you believe it? $50 for 12 cookies. That's pretty hardcore.
You know, there's also good news, too. Every year, this group called Watchdog World Against Toys Causing Harm, that is quite a mouthful, releases an annual list of holiday toys to warn parents that are dangerous. And number one on that list is the Darksaber electronic lightsaber, which is $30.
Uh-oh.
They're worried that kids might bonk someone over the head with it. Yeah, it's a sword. What the hell do you think they're going to do?
The swinging a plastic sword is not safe, and so the Darksaber only used under Moff Gideon supervision.
I love it.
Catfish, the final bit of news is not really news so much as I want to say that 2 weeks ago I was going crazy because a guy I knew when I moved to Chicago to do some improv there, Kevin Dorff, was an Imperial officer who got sucked out of the back of an Imperial ship when the Mando, Bo-Katan, and the Mandalorians attacked this Imperial ship. And I was like, oh, hey, that's Kevin Dorff. Only afterwards did I think, you know, I actually have gone out drinking with Horatio Sands. He was also in Chicago when I moved there. When I say I went out drinking with him, he kind of was all by himself at the bar just drinking and didn't join the rest of us because he wanted to get completely hammered. We were there. I was there with the Farley brothers, Kevin and John. And anyway, so here I knew another person on The Mandalorian. I'm waiting for all my Chicago improv friends to suddenly pop up on that and be like, oh, hey, here's somebody else I know. Have you known anybody on The Mandalorian yet, Catfish? You're a famous actor out there in the world.
No, I don't know anybody on The Mandalorian. I'm a 13-time loser now.
Aww. Have you heard any stories about friends auditioning for it? Or
You know, I have not. I actually know the person who cast for it. It's a very famous casting director here, and they cast all the Marvel stuff.
Oh, wow.
And so I did get cast on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. years and years ago. A lot of times when I see casting directors, I'm like, oh, I know them. So there we go.
And that just means that we are jinxing it, so you will definitely get called in and get a part. I'm so excited. This is going to be great.
Yeah, we'll see. They don't seem to... I don't know how much they audition as far instead of just straight offers to people. So we'll find out.
Stay tuned. Keep downloading, keep subscribing when your buddy Catfish is soon to be beaten up by the Mando. Catfish, we've gone off traffic a bit. You ready to break down this episode?
Let's do it. Let's break it down Grogu style.
This episode was directed by Dave Filoni. Everybody in the Star Wars world knows him as the creator of Star Wars Clone Wars and Rebels. He ran those animated shows, and he is known as the creator of Ahsoka Tano. Let's get to it right to the top, Catfish. You say you don't know Ahsoka Tano. What did you think? Were you impressed by this new character to you, Ahsoka Tano, and the actress playing her, Rosario Dawson?
She was very cool. She does have that very sort of kind of like lone samurai feel. They set her up as so reliant on using the double lightsaber move that there's actually a little bit of tension when she loses one in her final fight. I was like, can she fight with one? She loves fighting with two. And I will say this, two does feel like overkill, but completely cool.
Hell yeah. Take them both
Again,
out.
I mean, we could talk about her big conversation. Probably seems like something we should save for later as far as her philosophy about training Grogu.
Okay, well, let's hold off on that. I want to say that I have seen a lot of these animated shows, but I haven't watched all of them. I'm not the biggest fan of all of them, but I thought she did a great job representing the character in the introduction to her here on The Mandalorian in this episode, where she was coming through this fog and smoke, and she would appear like a wraith. I loved it. I thought that was a great introduction. And once again, the first half of this episode, I was completely on board. I was like, this is great. It was a great action set piece. I liked the design of the world, this design of Corvus, the Flores planet, and the city of Caladan. Caladan, if you're familiar with the Dune book series, Caladan is the homeworld of House Atreides, the main family there in the beginning of the Dune series. And Corvus was a planet that was obliterated during the Great Purge by the army of the Jihad in the Dune book series. So nice little throwback to a book series which really influenced Lucas a lot, Dune. And I just like the look of it. I heard a forested world, and I thought we'd see, okay, another Endor, another world like we saw last season with the village where Mando went. So the fact that this was a unique wildfire-swept forest with these giant beasts eating things in the distance, I thought that was a great look for the city.
Again, my sense is this is a swamp world.
Stuck in the mire. Now, let's get to this right up top because I don't think he really had much to do. How long did it take for you to recognize that the Magistrate's first in command, her right-hand man, Michael Biehn?
Even though I had been spoiled by an FOP, friend of the podcast, that Michael Biehn was in this, I still did not recognize him in his first scene.
I didn't either. And I love Michael Biehn. He's great as a hero in movies like Terminator and Aliens. He's great as a villain in Tombstone and in The Abyss. If you haven't seen him in The Abyss, his villain is the greatest thing in that film. You can tell by these films I'm mentioning that these are 80s and 90s films. It's been a while since he's been around. And yeah, I didn't recognize him either. But I normally love Michael Biehn.
I love him too. You always wonder if people kind of drop off the radar and come back, whether they had some like personal troubles and that's why they weren't still working. So I'm just glad to see him back for whatever reason. Looks like he's been on, we've got desert planets, we've got forest planets, we've got ice planets. Looks like he's spent some time on the plastic surgery planet.
Oh, no.
It is still great to see him. I miss the guy. He really does, as you say in those movies, had a great sense of kind of an aw shucks heroicness he had some charm to him. We don't really get to see that here, but still great to see him.
Right. Now, how about this? How did you feel about our big bad? I already said I had some apathy towards these villains. How did you feel about the Magistrate? She was played by an actress who's a stunt woman who's appeared in a million things as a stunt person. Here, she really gets to be front and center in acting. How did you feel about her?
It turns out she's actually the goddaughter of Bruce Lee.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, that is pretty good. My only problem with her is, as you were saying earlier, we need to know why somebody is bad. Again, I mean, people might think we're heartless and saying like, well, she's shocking people. Isn't that bad enough? I mean, it's bad, but it's not like planetary level bad. I don't really understand what her function here is. We do get a little bit of an explanation after the fact, but it still doesn't make her a big enough bad to me to understand what's going on. So just as you said, without having a sense of where she fits and what her plan is, I feel like we bumped into a lot of bad guys in this series, and we pretty much know right away what their plan is. Well, I don't know where she fits in.
Right. I just mentioned the forest planet a while ago where he met that school marm Omera and where he first met Cara Dune, the Mando did, in Season 1. And so those villains were faceless thugs. But we saw them torturing these villagers, and then we grew to love those villagers, and we saw Mando had the connection with that woman, Omera, in Season 1. So their defeat, once again, seems like a big deal. Hey, we took out these bad guys. And those faceless aliens also had an AT-ST, so they had a big weapon that we also had to take down, and they were like stakes. Even in this first scene, and I love this first scene, I thought to myself, and I think people who know the character of Ahsoka Tano, I think everybody saw that and said, well, she could easily take all these people out right now. Why? What's the wait? What's the hurry?
This is what I thought, too, was if it was me, I would say you have one day, and then I'd sneak around the back when they thought they had time.
Yeah. Exactly. If they're truly evil, why give them a day so they can cause more damage? They're already threatening about killing prisoners and killing these people in the village who we certainly are led to believe are completely innocent. I need some proof before I say that.
Well, like you said, what she really wants is information. The people are really a secondary concern. Good Jedi or bad Jedi?
Thank goodness she's not teaching Grogu. And let's get to it. So Mando arrives there. He's brought into town. He sees it's trouble. He sees the people up in the stockades. And they assume, hey, he's a hunter. We've got this problem. Go get it, and you'll get this Beskar spear.
Whoa. The most important thing here, like a blinking red light, is finally someone asks him to do something, and he mentions payment. Not help, payment. Give me some money for this job you're sending me on. That Beskar spear, man, that looks pretty badass.
And he does have it at the end, so you'll have to wonder if maybe he'll be using that in a Darksaber battle with Moff Gideon coming up. We'll have to see.
I mean, how many things does he have now? I have to say, one thing that didn't strike me until I watched the previously on was when he ran headlong, absorbing shots from the stormtroopers so he could fire on them. And I thought, knowing how flimsy the stormtrooper gear is, why didn't he just use his little birds then?
That is a great point. These little birds, maybe the warranty only works. You have to be surrounded on all sides, so if they're in front of you, it's like, oh, it doesn't work.
The little birds, TanOh-No, they just have to hope that you don't notice that these things aren't used when necessary, and he has to actually do things like running headlong into trouble.
And let's get to it. Once again, I love the first half of this episode. The highlight of the first half of this episode is only 15 seconds long. It's when Mando, he's like, okay, they told me the Jedi's out here. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to fight the Jedi. I'm looking around. Where is she? He turns around. Here comes Ahsoka Tano with both her blades down. Beskar steel can block a lightsaber. Holy crap, this is awesome. It only lasts 15 seconds, but it's so great. It's so thrilling. You have people who are meeting equal challenges, right? It's like, okay, here's somebody worthy of my skills. Here's somebody worthy of her skills. And so it was a great, very short fight, and I loved that moment. People say it's like a Marvel thing, where anytime a Marvel superhero meets another Marvel superhero, they have to fight for a bit before they realize, hey, they're on the same team. So I just loved it. That was possibly my favorite point in the whole episode.
It was so good, and what it beautifully sets up is the final battle.
Yeah.
Because when we're watching the final battle, we're like, well, she's not going to be able to defeat the Beskar spear with her lightsabers.
Right. So good, so good. So that's 15 seconds. Shortly after that 15 seconds, we spend a minute and 24 seconds in complete silence as Ahsoka and Grogu mind talk. That was the first sign to me of like, okay, I understand they're communicating in their minds, but this is 6 times as long as the awesome fight. What's going on? And now, Grogu. If you just want to unload on that name, or if you want to praise the name, or if you think fans will still call him TanOh-No, Baby Yoda, what do you think's going to happen now that we know the child's name?
Well, I think I've come around to, we're over a season and a half in, and as much as I've tried, I don't think that the world has been lit on fire with the idea of calling him TanOh-No. However, TanOh-No is still better than Grogu. Grogu is not cute. Yoda is cute. The other name, which I don't even know and I never knew, but I've read before, the other Yoda-like being.
Right, the other Yoda-like being is a female Yoda species character who was in the Jedi chamber, the council chamber in The Phantom Menace, and we found out that her character was named Yaddle. So we had 2 of these creatures who both their name began with the letter Y. And so you might have assumed we were going that way, but no, we're going with Grogu.
Goo. That's what I have to say. What did you think about the name? Honestly, I really thought the first real mistake that this series has made.
Well, one funny side note to all this is that the name Grogu leaked 6 months ago on Reddit, but none of the Reddit users believed it. This guy went on Reddit and said, I've got this source who has worked on the show, and apparently they're going to reveal that Baby Yoda's name is Grogu. And everybody downvoted it on Reddit and was like, you liar, stop doing this. I wouldn't like Grogu in any way, except for the way that the scene reveals it. This scene, we're going to get to our Twadorable moments in a bit, but that scene...
Oh, you mean our Grogurable moments? Grogurable moments. Grogurable. It's going to be hard to say.
It is going to be hard to say, but we will get to those in a minute. But both times when Mando says the name Grogu and the child spins his head because he recognizes his name and looks up at Mando and smiles, that was very cute. So that makes me a bit forgiving of Grogu as a name. Listeners, are you going to refer to him now as Grogu? Are you going to still call him the child or Baby Yoda or Twoda? We want to know. Write to us on social media at DoublePHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/DoublePHQ. The one thing I'll say for people who have trouble with Grogu is that we learned that the Mandalorian's name is Din Djarin, right? We know his name is Din Djarin, but no one, seemingly in the world or outside the world, has referred to him by that name since we learned. It's still, hey, Mando, Mandalorian. Are you a Mandalorian? Mando. So there's a chance that we now know his name is Grogu, but in the universe, I'm not sure how often Mando will say it. It'll be interesting to see going forward how that works.
Now, before you get into Grogu's backstory and this scene, which I really want to talk about because this is, in the story, it's the point in which we thought was the end, but is actually a linchpin to launching us into a different thing. Right. Is a couple things about Twoda, Baby Yoda. Now, his little pod's been crushed. We saw it get crushed. Right. And so now Baby Yoda has to be picked up. But you cannot resist picking up Twoda, right? But listen, even though Yoda himself was old, he's still pretty short. And I'm not sure whether I've been able to I would have been able to stop myself from picking up Yoda. Now, would Yoda have felt emasculated if people kept picking him up? Do you think he would have felt emasculated, or he would have used the Force to stop me from picking him up and scratching his head and his ear behind his ears? I would have to scratch behind Yoda's ears.
No means no, it does.
I mean, we know he likes to ride on Jedi's backs.
Oh, that's true. He's too lazy. He's like, Luke is his Uber. He's like, let's go over here, we shall.
Look, he refers to Luke as rickshaw. You are. You're my rickshaw. But picking him up, is he okay with that?
I don't think Master Yoda would be okay with that, but that would be funny.
All right, so let's get into his backstory and her decision, both of which I was confused about for different reasons.
I call the backstory we find out about Grogu, who is 50 years old. And people are pointing out that is most likely the age that Anakin Skywalker would have been. Darth Vader would have been if he hadn't fallen at the second Death Star battle. So Grogu, until he was about 21, somehow, all these years ago, this would be, 29 years ago in his time, he was at the Jedi Temple. So think of how young and small he must have been then. He was at the Jedi Temple. He was raised there, but when he was 21, that's when Order 66 and Revenge of the Sith came down. And someone took him from the temple and hit him. And then he suppresses his Force abilities because he was afraid. Now we know fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to killing people with lightsabers like Ahsoka does. Wait a minute, oh no. It's an odd choice. Because we didn't know Grogu's backstory, it gave all the fans around the world ability to think and come up with crazy theories. Like, maybe he's a clone of Yoda. Maybe he's Yoda's actual child. People could come up with any background for him. But instead they come up with this, that he was there on Coruscant in the Jedi Temple. When the massacre came, he was spirited away. Now, to me, the big thing about that massacre is that's like a big moment in the story. We're always told that everybody who was there at the temple, Anakin and the stormtroopers killed. And yet, somehow now we're finding, wait a minute, not all of them were killed. And it makes you scratch your head. Does that mean Anakin Skywalker, a.k.a. Darth Vader, was incompetent? What's going on? So you could say maybe there's more mystery there, but I just found it the least interesting backstory. What did you think?
All right, well, here's my issue. Now, I was trying to get, the whole idea of trying to get Twidorable to catch fire in order to make us rich and famous podcasters was combining the word Yoda with the word tween. So a tween is like a 13-year-old, and so the idea was that, that Grogu was actually kind of a teen.
Yeah.
However, the way we've seen him, maybe the reason why it didn't catch fire was because most people are thinking of him as Baby Yoda.
An infant, correct.
And right, exactly. He doesn't seem young just because he can't communicate. So then, we don't get an idea, okay, he's communicating, but also just the things that he's interested in.
Right.
Like a baby, like he's obsessed with food. And the way he acts makes him seem like he's a baby. So you don't train babies to do things. You can't train babies to do things. So the idea that he's a baby now and that when he was half as old as he is now, he was being trained, doesn't seem to jive with the way he's been represented in the rest of this series. And so that's my main issue. I was like, what? He was being trained a long time before this? Like, he still seems like a baby, even though Twoda might have been better. So that's my main problem with this. It's not retconning. We haven't heard anything before, but it just doesn't seem to match with what we've seen from him so far.
Because he is, as we call him, an age you would assume of a tween was, is it good that he can't speak? Because he would just be yelling out things like, Dank Ferric and Bantaboodo, like the whole day long, like all teens curse.
Right. I'm going to go to my room and play with this knob. Oh, boy. Like all teens, playing with his knob in his room.
Shameful. Now, people have been trying to figure out, Catfish, well, who would have taken him away from the Jedi Temple and the massacre? If it was a good guy, people online have been speculating about Jocasta Nu. Who in the world is Jocasta Nu? If you saw the movie Attack of the Clones, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, she was the old lady librarian who Obi-Wan went to say, hey, I'm trying to find Kamino. It's not in the Jedi archives. And she was like, if it's not in the archives, it doesn't exist. And she was proven wrong. But in some of the comics and stories that have come out in the Disney era, she survived the massacre somehow for a long time. She was tracked down and later killed, as all the Jedi were, via Order 66, but in these comics, she survived the initial attack on the temple. And so people are saying, well, maybe it was her. Now, the flip side is maybe a villain took Grogu from the Jedi Temple when the massacre came down for possible nefarious reasons, but it's harder to think who that villain would be, who would still be alive, since most of those villains in Return of the Jedi got iced.
We've talked again and again about, this is the third Yoda-like creature in this universe. Mm-hmm. So you would think that if he had been at this temple, that a lot more people would know about him. She doesn't even really know about him. Like, right. It's for him to have not been wandering alone, that's the only way that I can see that he is unknown by these people who are connected with this group. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It is difficult to wrap your head around it. I suppose the idea that is good is that the answer to one mystery ends up creating new mysteries. Well, wait a minute, what about A, B, and C? And so that's the way you can keep interest like this in the show growing and the way you can keep telling these stories. But it's just very odd. We should talk about Ahsoka Tano herself. So if you haven't watched those Clone Wars episodes...
I have not.
The story is that Anakin, he was trained by Obi-Wan. He reached a certain age, and they thought, okay, you need a Padawan. We'll give you this young girl who, for a very brief time, had the nickname Snips. It's Ahsoka Tano, and she and Anakin have a good connection as he tries to train her in the ways of the Force. Now, of course, he's got some issues with the Force himself. What ends up happening in that storyline is that she starts becoming disillusioned with all the violence of the Clone Wars. And in fact, she's blamed. A terrorist attack happens in the Clone Wars, and some people wondering if she did it, and she gets blamed for it. She gets cleared, but that was kind of the final straw for her. She's like, I'm leaving the Jedi Order. I am no longer a Jedi. Now, this episode is titled The Jedi, so maybe they're talking about Grogu himself. Who knows? But she leaves the Jedi Order. Theoretically, that explains how somebody like her can get away and not be hunted down like all the Jedis were in Order 66. But she did have a real close connection to Anakin. And so she has this line where she says she senses a lot of fear in Grogu. She won't train him. And she says, quote, he's formed a strong attachment to you. I cannot train him. His attachment to you makes him vulnerable to his fears, his anger. I've seen what such feelings can do to a fully trained Jedi Knight. to the best of us, better to let his abilities fade. So that's really strong, especially if you watch those Clone Wars episodes where she saw a good friend of hers, Anakin Skywalker, turn to the dark side, and that continued in the animated show Rebels. And so that's a really strong motivation, but it's also, to me, it feels a bit like a cop-out. The show is Mandalorian and Grogu. The two of those characters are the show. And so you obviously couldn't have Grogu leave the Mandalorian and really have a show continue.
Right.
But in my own mind, there are a million different ways you could spin this. She could have simply said, hey, I quit the Jedi Order. I'm not the person to train him. You came looking for a Jedi. I'm not technically a Jedi, so you really should go somewhere else. It could have been like, I can't train him because I've got this mission to track down Grand Admiral Thrawn. I'm going to put myself in a lot of danger. He should stay with you until that.
Great, love
there are
that.
a million reasons why you could have come up with. But this is the one they gave us. He's got too much attachment. He's already got signs of the dark side. I can't train him because I saw somebody close to me with attachments fall to the dark side. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. How did you feel?
I did mark this episode down because of this for the same exact reason as you. Not that she said she couldn't do it, but the reason she gave.
Right.
Exactly the kind of stuff that you're saying. Is that I can understand where she's coming from, but I didn't quite buy her reasons. Because just my knowledge of the dark side, and again, my knowledge of Star Wars and the Force, but to me it seems like the worst thing to do with someone who has a connection to the Force is to let them go untrained, because when you do that, if you still have the Force, you have to be careful not to be sucked into the dark side because of the power. You know,
yeah.
People who have power don't usually, they get overcome by that power and they don't weigh it judiciously. So to me, I believe that she's in what she's saying, but it doesn't make sense to me. It seems like the worst reasoning. It really seems like that his powers won't fade. It'd be more likely he'll just use it whenever he needs it, and without training, he won't use it properly, and that his powers will be twisted. As I said earlier, his pushback was very weak. I just wanted him at one point to say, "We had a deal." Damn it. I make deals all the time and they end up worse, but I still go through the deal. We had a deal. He does say that his limited powers, Twoda's limited powers, isn't stopping him being chased down. And they saw what was happening in the last episode. They saw what he was trying to be used for. So at least I would say, hey, look, whether you train him or not, he's being hunted down, and there's a plan to harvest his blood to give the Empire more Force-sensitive people. Like, you got to do something. This is not my fight. And then she comes up with another reason, but at least he's got to put up some fight at that point. He's like, no, all right, it's what you said. I'll move on. We both know that Mandalorian and Tutor are going to stay together for the entire series, but don't get to a big point where he finally finds a Jedi and then like, nah, I can't do it. All right, fine. That's not going to wash.
Catfish, I think you bring up a bunch of great points. Let me throw out another one. This is a galaxy that was under an oppressive regime of the Emperor Palpatine and his stormtroopers for decades. He has been defeated. You don't think the name Luke Skywalker, the guy who blew up the very first Death Star and obviously played a big role in the destruction of the second one and the downfall of the Emperor, you don't think that's going to be a name everybody knows all throughout the galaxy? Come on. Ahsoka would know the name Skywalker because she would think to herself, she'd think, oh, wait a minute, that's interesting that he has the same last name as my good friend Anakin Skywalker. The fact that she's not saying, hey, you should find a Jedi, and the one I know of is Luke Skywalker, or maybe even try his sister Leia Skywalker, anything. But instead, it's this mealy-mouth solution, which we'll get to in a bit. Before we get to that, though, do you want to have anything to mention about this assault on the city? I thought the assault on the city was weak. I guess I do like little pieces of it. I do like the fight with the Magistrate and with Ahsoka a bit, but it certainly wasn't the best fight. And I do love Michael Biehn being completely evil and ready to put down his one gun while he shoots Mando at the same time. But otherwise, these villains didn't put up much of a fight, that's for sure.
To me, the favorite part of it is when you have this hard scrabble humor, and the most humorous part of this episode, besides all the Grogu moments,
It's going to take us a while to say that.
I still said that wrong. Is them listening outside as the fight goes on. Michael Biehn and Din Djarin listening to the fight was humorous.
Yeah, it was a nice twist on it of like, hey, we're the side attraction here. Do we need to bother to do this? Let's wait till the main event is done before we get going.
It's funnily accentuated how little we know about the townspeople, that the one guy he sort of interacted with, at the end we find out he's kind of the mayor, and you're like, all right, well, I guess there's this, maybe there's a backstory there that got cut out of this episode.
Right, and I heard, I haven't verified this is true, but I heard that actor who is like the governor or the mayor there of Caladan, he apparently is a very famous Walt Disney Imagineer. That's the people who create those fun rides and fun areas of the Disney World theme parks. And so that's who I heard he was. But yeah, we had no idea who he was other than he is the villager who speaks. Well, hold on. There was a second villager who spoke in grunts as he was in the shockade. So great acting. He was a member of the Six Flags Imagineers. They put him in there.
I would have done that part. Why
we find out Ahsoka's big goal was to find out information. But about what? We didn't find out till the very end. It was the information for the location of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Catfish, did you recognize that name? Did that name mean anything to you? What were your thoughts when you heard, okay, we did all this to get this information?
My first thought was, who the F is Grand Admiral Thrawn? I'm glad I didn't miss anything in the episode. No idea who Thrawn is. Don't know why. At least when we were dealing with the well-known character that we had, I can't even remember now, was it last episode? No, it was a couple episodes ago when we met the other Mandalorians, and we met the quote-unquote leader of those Mandalorians, Katie Sackhoff. At least she explained what she wanted and why she wanted it. No idea about Grand Admiral Thrawn. My only guess could be, knowing that the tight wire that they have to go on is that they had a good reason for not explaining that at all.
Well, we can speculate that in a bit. Listeners, if you don't know who Grand Admiral Thrawn is, the early 90s was a very dark period for Star Wars fandom. 1991, to be exact, Return of the Jedi, the last Star Wars action film, had come out 8 years earlier. There had been some Ewok adventures, some cartoons, but none had been met with much excitement. Lucas and the team there at Lucasfilm tried to get some excitement back into the Star Wars world by releasing a trilogy of books by famed science fiction author Timothy Zahn, and these books came to be known as the Thrawn Trilogy. So the Emperor was dead, we need a new big bad guy for Luke, Leia, and Han, our original trio, to fight. And so they created this Imperial General Mastermind who had survived the destruction of the second Death Star, and he was taking the remnants of the Empire and seeing what he could do with them. And sure enough, it involved things like cloning and various things that we've touched upon here in the Mandalorian TV series. But he was part of these books that when Disney purchased the Lucasfilm properties and Star Wars in general, Lucasfilm said this is too crazy a canon, it contradicts itself, it's all over the place, we'll make all this stuff designated as legends, and so it's no longer part of the Star Wars canon. Because Admiral Thrawn was so loved by fans from these books, Lucasfilm and the Disney era has brought the character back in a similar role. He's still a brilliant Imperial general who gets by with his mind to defeat the Rebels or the New Republic, but his backstory had to change based on the new timelines and the new canons. And he has been a big character in the animated shows, and some people suggest that Admiral Thrawn is there so that if you wanted to have a spin-off show based around Ahsoka Tano, her big bad could be tracking Thrawn. Once again, you don't have any of this outside knowledge, Catfish, but based on this one episode, would you be excited in following this wayward former Jedi, Ahsoka Tano, as she hunts down an Imperial super intelligent officer, her own version of Moff Gideon? Does that sound like a great spin-off show to you?
It sounds like a great spin-off show, so that's fine. Are they setting that up? I know they've got a whole bunch of other shows planned and already discussed. I don't know if they're shooting any of them, but there are some other shows. Have we heard anything about this one?
All speculation. People were assuming, I should say, that Disney was going to wait until they saw how the audience reacted to Rosario Dawson and live-action Ahsoka before making any decision of, hey, should we spin off this show on its own? We know that the Obi-Wan miniseries is coming. That's a one-shot with Ewan McGregor. Going to start filming real soon and probably debut on Disney Plus in 2022. Also starting real soon is the Cassian Andor series, which we also believe will be launched in 2022. We don't know if that is an actual series or miniseries. We know Cassian Andor's fate, just like we know Obi-Wan's fate. So there's a chance that could be a one and done. And a third show we know that Disney has signed up to do, but it's just kind of been an agreement to do it. We don't know anything else about it or how far it's gotten, is the creator of a show on Netflix called Russian Doll, which was a show a lot of people liked, which had a premise similar to the movie Groundhog Day, where the protagonist keeps reliving things over and over. The creator of that show, she signed a deal to create a show for Disney Plus based on Star Wars, but we know nothing about it. You wouldn't assume that's the Ahsoka show either. But the very fact that we're talking about it and we're thinking about this, and to be honest, Disney probably should be thinking about spinning off characters and making their own shows, it does feel once again that it doesn't tie too much to the story we're following on this particular show. That is Mando, Grogu, and they're trying to find a happy place for Grogu to live while being pursued by Moff Gideon. It seems like a different adventure. Maybe if the show is going to become Game of Thrones, as we've talked about in past podcasts.
When we talk about spin-offs, I mean, I guess they've only really set up a couple of things that seem like they're really maybe trying to set them up, and that's with Ahsoka and with Katie Sackhoff. I'm just going to keep calling her Katie Sackhoff.
Bo-Katan, correct. Well, you don't want to see Cara Dune as Space Marshal as she patrols the Outer Rim, keeping it clean for the New Republic? That doesn't sound like a spin-off show to you?
I want to see Cara Dune lawyer as she goes across the universe, conducts recounts of votes.
Catfish, I think you would love Cara Dune Marshall. I can promise you she wouldn't wear a mask.
Well, there you go. That's really good. You're right about that.
Now, Catfish, this ends with Din Djarin, Mando, and Twoda, a.k.a. Grogu. They now have yet another mission. It's to find the ancient Jedi temple ruins on the planet Tython and find the Seeing Stone and place Grogu there, where he gets to decide, do I want to be a Jedi and learn the ways of the Force, or do I want to hang out with this masked weirdo and go on adventures of the week?
So what you're saying is Ahsoka says, I don't think he should be trained. His attachment to you makes him vulnerable, so I won't train him. Why don't you take him somewhere else and see if he should be trained?
That's a great argument when you put it like that. If she had said it that cleanly, this episode would have been about 10 minutes shorter.
It would have, indeed.
Well, how about this, Catfish? Listeners, we are taking on faith that they're not going to split up Mando and Grogu anytime soon, unless, of course, it's for story reasons, for Grogu to be captured by Moff Gideon. What can they do? They are hamstrung by the sequel trilogy, in that if Grogu were to go train to be a Jedi with Luke Skywalker, there's a good chance he'd be in the Jedi Temple that Kylo Ren destroys and slaughters everybody in, that we find out from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. So it feels like Grogu and Mando are always going to be together, and so this Seeing Stone is just going to be another stop that's going to point us further in a journey which is going to be, hey, we're father and son. We're a clan of two. We should always be together, the end.
Well, I mean, I think eventually whenever this show ends, and I wonder how long they're going to let this one go. I mean, the idea would be that they jumpstart the Star Wars universe with this, and then, you know, as we see they're doing here, they do some spin-offs, and then they already have some other things in mind, and then this will end probably in 5 seasons.
Right.
I don't think that the Mandalorian is going to be the one to train him. He's horrible. He can't keep him from eating anything. He can't keep him from, I mean, he is unable to set appropriate boundaries.
Aw. Listeners, what do you think? Should he be trained? Will he be trained? What are your thoughts? At PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. And if you love this episode, do not let our tough feelings on it affect you in any way. And once again, write to us and explain to us why you loved it. We understand everybody has a different opinion. Opinions are valid no matter who they're from. Write to us on social media at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. And speaking of your feedback, Catfish, we got more great notes this week.
Oh, yeah. We got some good stuff. Well, first of all, Bubba, we had a poll last week.
Yep.
People love our polls.
They do.
We had a very good response to this one. The poll was, which side is Baby Yoda more drawn to? Mm-hmm. The dark side, the light side, a side of beef.
Okay.
And
here we go.
The dark side received 16% of the votes.
Ooh.
Yeah, the light side, 21%.
Oh.
So people are more optimistic, but they're most optimistic about side of beef. 63% chose side of beef.
Thank you, listeners. Keep us honest. Let us know which side Grogu is joined to more. And just the fact that you call them sides. Grogu would love sides. He's like the main course. He likes everything.
Yes, exactly. All right, and Janice O'Brien at OB534 says, enjoying your Mandalorian podcast. I especially enjoy at Musical Concepts Music Review. Have enjoyed his takes since Lost.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that's going back. Also love the Twadorable section. Thank you, and I hope this enters me into your contest.
You're in, Janice. Thank you so much for this feedback. We also got some feedback from Brian K on Twitter, who's at _Skelter_, who just simply wrote, love the podcast. You're also entered because he sent a screenshot of his subscription. Thank you so much, Skelter.
Thank you. Love that. List Girl 0311 says, I found Parsec passion, and I've been listening to it. Really enjoy your takes on The Mandalorian. Imagine my surprise when I found this video and you were the same two guys at Con of Thrones last year. I was at this panel at Con of Thrones. Now I can put faces to your voices. Thank you for the work you do to entertain us. Awesome. Well, List Girl is a real loyal listener.
We love it. List Girl must have found us through the Joffrey of podcasts. Search your podcast apps for our ridiculous takes on HBO's Game of Thrones. We also had from the greatest of names.
Do it again. Do it again.
Holly Hunt Pants, who says...
No. Don't skip over it.
Oh, I can't skip this. This is from V. Mazino.
Yeah, say the full name.
Ministro das Acamelicos Interiors.
Oh my God. All right, it's a Luca, not a Kula. Alusa Nacoes Interiores. I butchered it too, but less than you.
They wrote, ooh, my. I love how you guys spelled my name. Pretty much spot on, by the way. Thank you for
No, that's not possible. We've said it 27 different ways. I guess we got it right once.
Thanks for the shout out. Oh, thank you so much. We also had one from our good friend Double H. It's at Hunt Pants on Twitter. Holly wrote, Cara Doomplorable, Catfish is on fire. I hope by the time I get to #finally go to Galaxy's Edge, there will be a Razor Crest ride open. Man, Catfish, Disney is going to make $1 million off this Grogu merchandise. But should they open a Mando ride at Galaxy's Edge? Interesting.
They absolutely should. I have to tell you, Bubba, as I was talking about last week, there are now video games for the Oculus Quest 2 that are Star Wars themed. And even though I had Vader Immortal, I had not played it yet. And I played it this last week. And early on in the first chapter, you're in a prison cell.
Uh-oh.
And Darth Vader comes right towards you and stands. He's like a foot taller than whoever you are. Stands like a foot away from you and looks down at you and starts talking. Bubba, I have never gotten chills.
Awesome.
In a video game the way I got chills here. I'm like, oh my God, Darth Vader could kill me.
That is great.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, man. And Endless Mike, another loyal listener at Endless Mike 03 says, I mostly like the new segment with Double M, but he's got nothing on the segments with Nephew Paul. It's a shout out to Nephew Paul. I love it.
And because of that, Endless Mike, I recorded Nephew Paul, him giving his thoughts, admittedly on last week's episode of The Mandalorian, but they'll be at the very end of the podcast. You can hear from Nephew Paul, who's still loving the show and really having fun with it.
Oh, man, special request. Look at that. We give our listeners what they want. Lady Tourmaline says, just found this podcast. Great analysis. I love the music analysis segment. Really helped me understand how the music affects the episode. Please continue it. Listen, Lady Tourmaline, our musical concepts, our buddy Matt Murdick, has slowly been responsible, despite Endless Mike's feelings, for the majority of the enjoyment that people get out of these podcasts.
For sure. Amen.
So we're not going to stop. We're going to tie him to a chair and force him to continue.
Yeah, he'll be coming up in just a bit. We got feedback from Camille, who's at Harley Camille on Twitter. She was answering our question of, hey, do you want The Mandalorian to be more Western, or do you want it to be more sci-fi-ish? And she wrote, I do like any sci-fi stuff in the story as long as it's not dark time travel. My mind couldn't take it, she wrote. How can you not just love it all? I was so excited to see Ahsoka right off the bat, kicking ass with her lightsabers. During quarantine, I watched all the Clone Wars and Rebels cartoons, so it was just awesome for me. I'm glad I didn't start crying since Mando did not leave Baby Yoda, #insert new name. She's not ready to say that new name just yet. Oh, thank you for this feedback.
It's not easy to say, especially when you try to combine it with another word. Josh Mackey at Jaws H. Mackey says, I wonder, since Ahsoka is always saying she's a Jedi, is the creator of her character the one who directed the episode saying she is a Jedi, even if she doesn't subscribe to the religion? That's an interesting question that I'm going to let you answer, Bubba.
Oh, I think it's a great question. Well, let's talk about it, Catfish. And we'll just use Episcopal, because that's what I am. But if you're Episcopal, but you don't go to church very often, or at all sometimes, like me, and if you have a lot of doubt, do you still call yourself Episcopal? And I just did call myself still Episcopal, so I think you would be. Jedi, it is kind of a religion. It's also an order, so I'm going to say you are a Jedi, even if you walk away from the strict rules and guidance. If you're following that path of using the Force to help people, yeah, you're a Jedi. That's what I say. What do you say?
Yeah, there's a big difference between what I'm going to call a lapsed Jedi and a fallen Jedi.
Oh, good point.
So
good
I think she's in the lapsed Jedi category.
I'm a fallen Episcopal. Hey, Tammy Reeves wrote, okay, here is my take for episode 13. For such a highly anticipated episode, I am left with an unsatisfied, anticlimactic feeling. No offense to Rosario Dawson. She did an incredible job with the fight scenes, but she also fell very far from the mark of portraying the real character of Ahsoka Tano. In fact, some things actually felt very contrary to Ahsoka. Whenever would Ahsoka strike out and attack someone without first perceiving a threat? So that's a good point. Ahsoka did attack the Mando, even though he really hadn't done anything as a threat. Tammy continues to write, the character portrayal just felt off. Like it was a little different force-wielding Togruta, not the Ahsoka we all know and love. There were some great reveals and tidbits, but overall, it did not make the impact I was longing for. Not saying I didn't like it, but it left me a little hollow, unsatisfied feeling. I was very happy it appears that Ahsoka's appearance will be a one and done. I think it would really hurt the character if she continued throughout the series. Oh, wow. Thank you, Tammy, for that feedback. I would say that possibly the way you should read this is that this is Ahsoka possibly as much as a decade after we last saw her in an animated show in that timeline of the story. So a decade later, you could become maybe more cold. Your character or thoughts on things could change a bit. But I love your thoughts, Tammy. Keep them coming.
All right. I love it. All right. Matt Murdick at Musical Concepts doing our music gave this chapter 13 8.5 double Bs.
Wait, double Bs?
Yeah, Beskar baitings. And he talks a little bit about music, which we'll hear more about later on. Oh, Dooley's left legs at Dooley's left legs. Once misattributed, his gender was misattributed by Musical Concepts.
Oh, no.
Says, I'd give this week's episode 8.5 triple Ws.
Wait, triple Ws?
Wielding wonderful weaponry.
Ah.
Love the addition of more Star Wars lore and tie into the universe as a whole. Unfortunately, Catfish and I were right and saw the darkness in Twoda. He says, I refuse to call him by that new ridiculous name. Great episode.
Listen, Dooley, I love hearing you say you loved it. I loved hearing Harley Camille say she loved it. If you guys are different from us, you heard some great reasons why people did love this episode. And so we give all thoughts. This was just our personal takes. And so I'm glad that some people really loved it. Ooh, Catfish, here's another note from Twitter. Caroline Tucker, who's at Caroline1475, just tweeted out, "Twoda is a better name!" ! So she's with you.
Thank you, Caroline. I hope she will vote in the poll that we'll put up to advertise this episode. Nathan Savka says, Chapter 13 started off strong and kept it coming.
All right.
Now, this season, we've seen Cobb Vanth, Boba Fett, Bo-Katan.
No, it's
Ahsoka
Bo-Katan.
Tano.
Yeah, it's Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan. I thought it was Bo-Katan, Ahsoka Tano, and just had the Thrawn name dropped. At this point, it's clear that the gloves are off as far as who can show up in The Mandalorian. I just hope that they can keep it from getting too unwieldy. Loving season 2 in the podcast. Keep it up.
Ooh,
that is a
thank you.
great... Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, all these people who love this episode, I'm glad you loved it. This is great. Hey, we still have some leftover feedback on Chapter 12. From our
You'll have to read this. I'm too outraged.
This was from our buddy at Patman23 on Twitter. Patman wrote, "I was surprised that Catfish gave it 10, though since Mando kept his helmet on, and instead of being rescued, it was a Deus Ex Mandalore. I have no true beef with Catfish, whose opinions I cherish. And if I did have a beef, we all agree that Twoda would attempt to steal it and eat it." Oh, Batman, so brilliant. So brilliant. Batman continues, "I'm particularly glad that our Mando was not unduly influenced by this fringe group of helmetless hippies that he ran into last time. I feel confident that the X-Wing pilot left a communicator with Cara Dune to contact him or his squadron if they were needed." Oh, so we were asking, was it a badge? What was the thing the X-Wing pilot left with Cara Dune? He says it's a communicator, and that, of course, is a brilliant thought, and hopefully that's correct.
Oh, man. Yeah, all right. Most of that sounds good to me.
We had so many listeners in the feedback talking about how they love At Musical Concepts. Well, he's back to break down this music. Let's go to him right now. You ready, Catfish?
Let's do it.
Hi, guys. Double M here. I'm going to be real quick this week. I only have 3 little things to talk about. And the first one we can take care of real quickly because I can't really play it. It's too complex to be played on one instrument. But I'm talking about that very contrapuntal, just like we talked last week, piece that started in the town in the celebration after the Magistrate was defeated, and then continued as Mando said goodbye to Grogu. What a name, right? Grogu. But the main figure that was used, the main through-line melodic figure, was taken from the bridge of the main theme. This is what I'm talking about. And there's little allusions to the other kind of main motif in there as well, but it's all happening at the same time. I can't duplicate it on the piano. I just wanted to put that little line out there so that you would understand where that piece came from. And again, it's contrapuntal. This is something that Ludwig has been doing a lot. He likes Bach, evidently. But moving on from there, I'm sure that everybody caught the little Yoda theme quote when Ahsoka was talking about the only other being that she had seen that was a great Jedi, right? You heard this little bit in there. Now, it was reharmonized a little bit differently than what we're used to hearing, but it wasn't anything to where you didn't recognize it, right? The thing I want to look at, though, is how Ludwig might have used the Yoda theme to help inspire his Ahsoka theme. To do that, though, we have to continue the melody of the Yoda theme here. So let me just finish that because I hate it when a melody starts and it doesn't get finished. But this is the way the rest of the melody sounds. I love that because it is so iconic. It has everything that makes John Williams great within it. It has those big leaps, and we've talked about those before in prior podcasts, John Williams loves that jump of a major seventh, and that one is in here. Not only that, there are leaps way beyond a major seventh, much bigger. The biggest jump is this one. That's huge. That's like an octave plus another minor third. And you don't need to know these numbers, but it's a big distance between the first note and the second note, right? And that helps represent the fact that for all people who have a relationship with the Force, there must be a leap of faith. A literal leap in the notes tells us about this leap of faith. This is why Yoda seems so powerful when he lifts that X-Wing. It's because of these big jumps and these leaps. It's not just that a crane is picking the X-Wing up out of a swamp, but we can't see it for the camera. It's the music that makes that scene so great. And those big leaps are something that might have turned Ludwig on to doing this theme for Ahsoka. We heard it several times in the episode, and the melody sounds like this. Now, notice that this melody has its biggest leap near the end of the phrase as well, just like Yoda's theme had the biggest leap at the end of the phrase. It's still not as large as Yoda's, because Ahsoka is not as powerful of a Jedi as Yoda was, but it's still a leap there at the end. So that's what I think the relationship between the Yoda theme and the Ahsoka theme is. I could be wrong. If you think differently, feel free to tweet at the boys, at the word double, the letters PHQ on Twitter, or at me, at Musical Concepts. But the beauty is, with this melody, Ludwig was actually able to use a few different harmonies, and most of them came from kind of the same place, but the one at the end really worked well. The typical harmony for this melody throughout the course of the episode was this. It's actually a pretty standard harmonization of those melody notes for the key that it's in. It's not really all that special. But what he did with it at the end, as Ahsoka was watching the Mandalorian take off with Grogu, still can't get over that name, he made the notes of each of those chords work in a way that the bass line stepped up and continued to build and felt bigger than the theme had before. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. Back to the boys in a second.
Why does Matt always sound so smart? He makes us really seem dumb. Darn you, Matt. Stop it. Stop being so brilliant in your musical analysis. I loved it.
Yep, well, there you go. That's why people keep coming back and skipping right to that part.
Yeah, just jump right ahead to that. Hey, Catfish, we're no longer calling them Twadorable moments, but do you have any Groguable moments from this episode?
So the Grogurable moments. This is a mistake.
Yeah,
this
it's
name is a
terrible.
mistake. Grogurable moment was when he says, "Get back into your seat." At the beginning, when the Mandalorian says, "Get back in your seat," and when Twoda is climbing into the seat, it's adorable. And then he untwists the silver ball. He loves that
knob.
silver ball. Oh my God, that reminds me. In the baby Twoda I got from Costco, that was only $20 and is like 18 inches tall, very cute. He comes with his little amulet, he comes with a teacup, and he comes with that ball because he loves that ball so much.
Oh, that's great. That is awesome.
Another moment is when as Mando is walking through the town and people are getting shocked, little Twoda hiding in the bag. And then the last thing we have is when, as you mentioned earlier, every time Mando tries to get that horrible word out of his mouth, Grogu, Baby Twoda turns and looks at him.
So
and it's
cute.
like, please don't call me that. What is your Grogu-able moment of the episode, Bubba?
Okay, so since Grogu's cradle, his pram, has been destroyed, he's being carried around in this purse. And what's funny, Catfish, is a couple episodes ago, remember how Mando ran out into that enemy fire so he could throw that flash grenade out to kill those stormtroopers on the Imperial ship? Mm-hmm. If you watch Baby Yoda, when he's in Mando's man purse, what is his head resting against? Those flash grenades. So this is very dangerous. Twoda, Grogu, Baby Yoda, the child, when his head is right next to explosive devices, I think this is trouble. But that is going to be my Grogu-able moment. How about you? What's your favorite?
Good. Mine has to be him climbing up onto the chair. It is so adorable.
So good. So good. And Catfish, help me out. A couple of weeks ago, you didn't find his movement too believable. I don't know if this was believable movement or not, him climbing into that chair, but it sure was cute as heck. And I thought it looked pretty good.
I thought that looked pretty good. I think still with the walking, not so great.
Yeah, it's hard to make him walk correctly. And we saw a little bit of that as he was walking down the Razor Crest ramp.
Well, because like a baby, he has a hard time walking because his head is so big compared to the rest of his body.
Catfish, this is the second week in a row. I think you're going to have a hard time finding some good Mandalicious lines of the episode.
Which is why I'm so glad that you wrote some down because I didn't write down any.
Catfish, I'll read them, but a couple of these I didn't put as Mandalicious. I listed as Grogu groaners of the episode.
Oh, Grogu groaners. Oh, man, we might have to add that now.
So there were a pair which were especially egregious or egregious.
Egregious.
First, when Lang, that's Michael Bihn's character, who's up on the wall, and he looks down at Mando and he says, "Guild, Mando, last I checked." Yeah, that's real quippy there, Mando. But then the absolute worst egregious moment of the episode, line of the episode, was where Lang asks him, "So you threw in with the Jedi?" Mando, "Looks that way." Yeah, it does look that way. Hello. You can't come up with anything quippier than that? "So you threw in with the Jedi?" "I threw in with the winning team." You know, whatever it would be, anything would be better than "looks that way." You know, how about this? Should Lang have said, "So you're still wearing the helmet?" "Looks that way." You know, yeah, he could have said, "This is the way." It would have been better. It wouldn't have been a Grogu-ious moment of the...
Egregious moment.
Whatever, of the episode. I had groans with both of those. So these are two lines that I did like. The first line was Ahsoka says, "The Jedi Order fell a long time ago." And the Mando snapped back with, "So did the Empire, but it still hunts him." Love that. I think that's a pretty sharp line. The second one...
I think it's a great line, if only her reaction wasn't, eh.
Right. Train him yourself, loser.
Not my problem. That falls under the category of not my problem.
And then another line that I really did like was Ahsoka saying to Mando, she goes, "Come here, you come here." And then she says, "I want to see if he'll listen to you, Mando." That would be a first. That's pretty good. That's like the only one close to a Mandalicious line of the episode for me. So that's my vote.
That's my vote, too. Although there is a moment where, let's be honest, the client could have been holding that knob and Grogu would have grabbed it from it. It's got nothing to do with his connection. It just has to do with Grogu wanting the knob. So it doesn't show any bond between them. It just shows Grogu's unslakable thirst for the knob.
Thirsty Grogu is something you'll only hear on the Parsec Passion podcast.
Exactly.
Hey, Catfish, we're going to end this episode the way we end with every episode of Parsec Passion podcast. A couple things in honor of our boy Grief. And our first one is our big one. It's our Bounty Hunter Guild battle. Who wins the puck? It's a Grief beef where we debate amongst ourselves for the ultimate puck prize. So Catfish today, because we talked about it a little while ago, it's the best possible spinoff. Disney Plus has one Star Wars show. It's been a huge hit for them, a huge moneymaker with all these Grogu toys. What would be the best spinoff to this Disney Plus series? Listeners, we want you to get in the fun. Write to us at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. We want to hear your options. These are ours. Which ones do you like the best? Which ones would you pitch to make more Mando money? We got to make some calamari flan and have a spinoff show. So, Catfish, let's hear it. What are you going to go with?
All right. So these are the ones. Well, I don't know. I don't know whether we should just. I almost feel at this point that I should just announce some options and then make you role play each one of them, because honestly, you are the best one with dialects here, and I want to hear you do a short pitch for each of these shows using the dialect of the person who's in charge of the show. Can we do it that way?
All right,
Could I
sure.
just force you to perform like a monkey? All right. So you're going to do these, and then we want our listeners to pick which is the best spin-off. So the first one is Antiques Roadshow with the Client. Just give us a short pitch on this one.
Yes, put the TanOh-No here on the table. Yes, let's open it up. Let's see what's inside. Oh, my goodness gracious. Look at this little figurine. Was this your grandmother's figurine? Yes, it was. What we're looking at here is a Alderaan shepherd boy figure made of complete Beskar. Wait, hold on. Let's flip it over. Oh, do you see this initial here? B.O. Do you know what B.O. stands for? You've got some
No.
You've got some B.O. It's Bail Organa. It's his Alderaan shepherd boy figure. Oh, completely. This is worth 12 calamari flan credit.
Oh, my God, I can't believe it. This is going to completely change my life. You know, I was just digging under my hut and I found it. I can't believe this.
When you said digging under your hut, I hope you didn't mean Jabba. Ha 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 ha. This is PBS, so I couldn't turn that joke blue like my boy Max Rebo. Heyo. Yes, next antique. All right, so that sounds like a great show.
It really does. I mean, really just his... I do wonder, though, you know, as he ushers people off, whether he just kills them and then...
Of course.
And then takes the valuables for himself.
Of course he does.
This next show is called The Apprentice with Grief.
Bounty Hunter, come on in, get in here. So, did you collect the puck?
Well, we had some problems. What happened was we were going to collect the puck, and then our speeder broke down, and so we had to take some time to take care of that. It's not really our fault, but we were unable to get the puck.
You had your shot, dust breather, but you failed. No pucks for you. Get out of here.
Oh, but wait, I was just hoping since we partially did the job, we could get some years taken off of our 700-year sentence.
No. Hey, Mando, show him your fire. Ooh, I didn't see it taking that violent turn there at the end.
Well, yeah, and I like how he only alluded to the "you're fired" reference so as not to get sued.
Listen, he's got to do what he's got to do. So those are two great spin-off shows. Thank God there are no more.
No, there's two more.
What?
The next one is the Great Bantha Baking Show with Twoda. Cooking we are today. Today we are cooking a bantha, and we have a nice pineapple sorbet after.
On your marks, get set, bake you will.
Oh, and as we see here, the Mandalorian is attempting to bake, but it's very difficult with the gloves, and the steam is fogging up his helmet. If only he would take it off.
In my mouth, I literally want to shove the whole spoon. If I was home, I probably would. Annoyingly, like it, I do.
To give a compliment. Oh, how painful. Deep genetic level that hurts on. Slice both her thumbs, Ahsoka managed to.
It doesn't affect how long a cake stays in the oven for. If it's dry, it's dry. Tatooine dry. The trash this cake shall be thrown in. Okay, so Catfish, whoa, look.
Well, you know, the only problem with the Great Bantha Baking Show is they never get to the end because Twoda keeps eating all the recipes while they're in the middle of cooking them.
Oh, okay. So, Catfish, thank God there are no more spinoffs at all.
Oh, there's one more spinoff.
One more.
It's called Let's Break a Deal with Ahsoka Tano.
Okay, Mando, you have in your hand one certificate which will have me training Baby Yoda, Grogu, in the ways of the Jedi. You can take that and walk away, or you can have what's behind door number 2. Last week on the show, we gave away a whole set of spears, Beskar spears, the Mandalorian metal that can't be defeated. Or do you want what's behind door number 3? And let me tell you this, will not fit in the Razor Crest. So what's it going to be? The certificate to have me train Baby Yoda, Grogu, or behind door number 2, or the giant hanger of door number 3?
Oh, this is tough. Door number 2. Door number 3.
Door number 3.
This is so tough. This is so tough. All right, okay, Ahsoka, I think I'm gonna hold on to what I have. I want you to train Grogu.
You've decided for me to train Grogu. Let's look what's behind door number 2. Oh, look at that. Look at that, everybody. It's Moff Gideon's Star Destroyer. He's coming to kill you.
Oh, no, wait, what happened?
Well,
I wanted you to train Grogu.
Wait, no, that's door number 3. Let's see what's behind door number 2.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, my goodness, it's
2.
another crate dragon. Goodness.
No, wait, I just wanted to hold on to what I have.
I'm sorry. This is Let's Break a Deal. And so, Mando, I'm sorry. There's too much fear in Grogu. Later, loser. I'm going to hunt Thrawn. Good night, everybody.
Wow, there's some great spinoffs.
Great shows.
You know, listen,
Yeah.
Obviously, we may not be hired to write on these,
Not
but
at
hopefully we'll at least be able to consult. So let's have our listeners decide which spinoff should be made.
Or pitch your own. We want to hear your pitches for Mando spinoffs, listeners. Once again, at double PHQ, the word double, the single letter P, then the letters HQ for headquarters, at double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, facebook.com/double PHQ. YouTube, leave those YouTube comments. Send us your screen grabs of your subscription to this ridiculous podcast, and we will be sure to get you eligible to win one of these awesome prizes. Catfish, there's only 3 episodes left, so let's end this episode with our good griefs of the week. That's where we talk about something positive out there in this episode, in the Star Wars world, or in the world in general. Listeners, it is coming up on the holiday season. We are about to enter the month of December. This is going to be a real rough December. 2020, we are all got to wear masks. We got to socially distance. We got to get past our good friends of COVID. But one thing that's really struck me as positive is that when I went out, and I made the mistake, I went like a lot of Black Friday shoppers, I went out and looked in some of these stores that I mentioned earlier, looked in Williams-Sonoma, but the one thing I saw everywhere was masks. Wear those masks and stay safe, because when you wear a mask, it means you're protecting others. I loved that. That's my good grief of the week. Catfish, what about you? Do you have a good grief to end this episode on?
Well, Ms. Catfish and I, for a number of years, as maybe listeners know or don't know, we've got a nearly 14-year-old puppy, Labrador Retriever, and for a long time we've been talking about getting him a little friend, and so we are going to get one in December, but just a couple short days from now we're going to be able to go and visit our new little puppy. And since he's going to be a little bit browner than the boy we have now, one of the names we're considering for him is Chewy.
Aw, not Grogu. You won't name this puppy Grogu.
Yeah, that maybe is let me think about it first. No.
Okay, Chewy the puppy it is. That sounds perfect. Listeners, don't be afraid to send us your good grief of the week. We love hearing good news as well. And even if we were a bit down on this episode, a lower-rated episode of The Mandalorian still has a lot of fun things to have in it. For everybody here, for Double P Media, my name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at FittenTrim. That's FITTENTRIM at FittenTrim on Twitter.
And my name is Catfish. You can hit me up at CJGman67 on Twitter. And you'll hear from us both on next week's episode of
Grogu Passion.
Sounds so disturbed. Oh.
If we changed the name of the podcast to Grogu, do you think we would get all sorts of listeners? Grogu Passion?
We might.
Okay.
Grogu's Goods.
Oh, hey.
Good Grogu.
I like it. Nephew Paul, what did you think of this week's Mandalorian?
I really liked it. It wasn't great, but I really did like it. Well, I thought the character development was great. I thought the way they connected it to the sequel trilogy was pretty good. And I thought everything about it was good. And I'm super excited for the next one, where the Mandalorian is going to meet Ahsoka Tano. It's not implied that it's Emperor Palpatine, but I do think that this cloning has to be somebody important. I saw a theory on YouTube. I don't necessarily believe it, but I saw a theory that it's Moff Gideon is trying to become a Jedi or a Sith. I don't believe it, but it's an interesting theory.
What have you thought about the season so far?
I liked it. Episode 2 was a bit meh, but I really liked it.